Hi, Pisces. This reading feels different already. There's something very quiet happening here, but it's powerful. I feel like someone can't stop thinking about you, even if they're doing their best not to show it. Something is shifting behind the scenes. And honestly, Pisces, I don't think you fully realize how much space you're taking up in this person's mind right now. I keep picking up on someone who has been feeling your energy from a distance. Maybe there's little communication. Maybe there's silence. Maybe things seem completely still on the surface. But underneath all of that, there's movement. This person has been replaying conversations, remembering small details about you, and wondering why they can't seem to let this connection go. The more they try to focus on other things, the more your energy keeps finding its way back to them. Okay, and what really stands out is that this doesn't feel like simple attraction. This feels emotional. This feels deeper than they expected. It's almost like they're starting to understand something about this connection that they couldn't see before. So let's take a look at what's really happening behind the scenes, because the energy coming through here is much stronger than it appears. The moon is the first card that catches my attention here, Pisces. And honestly, it feels like somebody is wandering through their own thoughts, trying to make sense of why you keep showing up there. I keep getting this feeling that your energy has been finding its way into this person's day when they least expect it. They could be busy. They could be distracted. They could be doing everything they can to focus on something else. But somehow, your presence keeps slipping through the cracks. It's strange because I don't feel like this person necessarily planned for this to happen. I don't feel like they woke up one morning and decided they were going to think about you. It feels more subtle than that, almost like hearing a song and suddenly being reminded of you, seeing something small and instantly connecting it back to a conversation you once had, feeling an emotion they can't explain and realizing your face is the first thing that comes to mind. And Pisces, the energy feels very quiet. This isn't somebody making grand gestures. This isn't somebody rushing towards you. This feels like someone sitting alone with their own thoughts. Someone trying to understand why your energy feels so different from everyone else's. Okay, the Page of Cups is sitting here, and I can't ignore how curious this person feels. It's almost childlike. They keep wondering things about you. What are you doing lately? How have you been? Are you happy? Have you moved on? Do you still think about them? There are so many questions floating around this person's mind. Questions they haven't asked. Questions they may never have spoken out loud, but they're there. I almost feel like they carry these thoughts around with them throughout the day. You know, Pisces, some people leave an impression. Others leave a memory, but your energy feels different. This person doesn't simply remember you. They feel you. And that's what seems to be confusing them. Because even in moments where there is distance, silence, or separation, they still feel connected somehow. The Queen of Cups is appearing right beside that Page of Cups, and immediately I feel this overwhelming softness. There is something about your energy that feels comforting to this person. Not perfect, not idealized, just safe. Like they can finally lower their guard. Like they don't have to perform. Like they don't have to pretend to be somebody else. I feel like this person has spent a lot of time around people who wanted something from them, people who expected things from them, people who pulled on their energy. But when they think about you, Pisces, the feeling is different. There is warmth here. There is understanding here. There is this sense that you somehow saw parts of them that they weren't showing the rest of the world. And honestly, that realization keeps getting stronger. The longer they sit with these feelings, the harder it becomes to dismiss them. The harder it becomes to tell themselves that this connection isn't important. Because every time they try to push it away, something pulls them right back toward it. The moon keeps appearing throughout this reading. It's almost like this person is navigating through emotions they don't fully understand yet. They're trying to name what they feel. They're trying to figure out why your energy lingers long after the conversation has ended. Why your presence still feels close even when you're nowhere around. And that's where things start becoming interesting. Because the star appears, and the moment it does, the entire energy shifts. I feel this person looking towards something, looking towards someone. Looking toward a possibility they may not have allowed themselves to consider before. There is hope here, not loud hope, not dramatic hope. Just a quiet feeling growing in the background. A feeling that maybe this connection means more than they originally believed. Maybe there was a reason they never completely forgot you. Maybe there was a reason your energy continued to stay with them through every distraction and every attempt to move forward. And Pisces, the strongest thing I'm picking up right now is that this process isn't happening because anyone is forcing it. It's happening naturally. The more this person sits with themselves, the more they find their thoughts drifting back towards you. The more they try to understand their own heart, the more your name seems to appear in places they weren't expecting. And as these cards continue unfolding across the table, it feels like some old memories are beginning to rise to the surface. The Six of Cups is sitting right in the center of the spread, Pisces. And the moment it appears, I get this overwhelming sense that somebody is revisiting moments they thought they had already moved past. Not because they're trying to. Not because they're intentionally sitting around thinking about the past. It feels more spontaneous than that, like memories finding their own way back. A laugh they suddenly remember. A conversation they haven't thought about in months. Something you once said that didn't make complete sense at the time but somehow feels different now. Okay, this person keeps returning to these little moments. Not the dramatic ones. Not the moments they expected would stay with them. It's the small things. The way you listened. The way you noticed details other people ignored. The way you seemed to understand things they weren't even saying out loud. And honestly, I think that's what's affecting them the most. Because the more distance exists between the two of you, the clearer those memories seem to become. It's almost backwards. Most people fade with time. Most memories soften. But for whatever reason, that's not what's happening here. The energy feels stronger. The details feel sharper. The emotions feel closer. Judgment is appearing beside the Six of Cups, and I feel like this person is looking at old situations through completely different eyes. There are conversations returning to them. Conversations they may have dismissed. Conversations they may have misunderstood. Conversations where Pisces was trying to tell them something important. And I keep hearing this energy of realization. Not regret exactly. More like understanding. Like somebody finally hearing the meaning behind words that they weren't ready to hear before. You know, sometimes people only understand the value of a moment after they've had enough distance from it. That's what this feels like. I see this person replaying interactions over and over, trying to remember exactly how things happened, trying to remember what you meant, trying to understand why your words seem to carry more weight now than they did back then. And every time they revisit those memories, they discover something new, something they missed, something they overlooked, something they weren't emotionally prepared to recognize before. The Hermit is here too. And honestly, this energy feels very private. I don't think this person is talking to many people about what they're feeling. I don't think they're announcing these realizations. This feels like something happening behind closed doors, late at night, long drives, quiet moments. Moments when nobody else is around. They're sitting with their thoughts. And the deeper they go, the more they begin seeing you differently. Because Pisces, I don't think this person fully appreciated your sincerity when they had direct access to it. I don't mean they intentionally ignored it. I think they simply didn't understand it. There was something about your kindness that felt natural. Something about your support that felt consistent. Something about your presence that became familiar. And because it was familiar, they stopped noticing how valuable it truly was, until they couldn't feel it the same way anymore. That's when everything started changing. The Ace of Cups is appearing, and the energy immediately softens. I feel walls lowering. I feel defensiveness fading. I feel somebody becoming more emotionally honest with themselves than they've been in a very long time. They're allowing themselves to feel things they spent a lot of time avoiding. They're allowing themselves to admit that your presence affected them, that your words mattered, that your care mattered, that your sincerity mattered. And honestly, Pisces, I don't think this realization happened all at once. It feels gradual, like drops of water filling a glass. Little moments, little memories, little reminders, until eventually they couldn't ignore what was sitting right in front of them. Because every memory seems connected to a feeling, and every feeling seems connected to you. There is something incredibly genuine beginning to emerge from all of this reflection. Something that wasn't visible before, something that couldn't be forced. And as these cards continue unfolding across the table, it feels like this person is getting closer to confronting emotions that have been waiting beneath the surface for much longer than they realize. The Tower arrives with a force that feels impossible to ignore, Pisces. And honestly, the moment I see it, I don't feel like this person is fighting with anyone around them as much as they're fighting with themselves. Something they've believed for a very long time is beginning to crack. A story they've repeated in their mind. A justification they've relied on. A reason they've used to keep certain emotions locked away. It doesn't seem to be working anymore. I keep seeing somebody trying to hold everything together while quietly realizing that the foundation underneath them isn't as stable as they thought. And that's uncomfortable, because once you see something clearly, you can't really unsee it. Once the truth reaches your heart, You can't simply place it back where it came from and pretend it never happened. Okay, this feels like somebody standing in front of a mirror and finally being honest about what they see. Not the version they show other people. Not the version they've been trying to become. The real version. The one they've been avoiding. The one that knows exactly what they've been feeling. And Pisces, for some reason, your energy keeps appearing in that reflection. The death card is crossing the spread, and I don't feel fear around it. I feel exhaustion. The exhaustion that comes from carrying something that no longer fits. The exhaustion that comes from pretending. The exhaustion that comes from forcing yourself down a path that your heart stopped believing in a long time ago. This person is shedding something. Not overnight, not dramatically, but piece by piece, layer by layer. There are habits changing, perspectives changing, priorities changing. I almost feel like they're waking up each day and noticing that things they once cared about don't hold the same power anymore. Things that used to distract them aren't working. Things that used to silence their emotions aren't working. And the more those distractions fade, the louder their inner world becomes. The High Priestess is here, and Pisces, this energy feels incredibly quiet. Nobody around them may even realize what's happening. That's what's fascinating. This transformation doesn't look loud from the outside. It looks normal. Life goes on. People continue talking. Responsibilities continue piling up. But internally, an entire world is shifting. I feel this person becoming much more aware of their intuition, much more aware of their emotions, much more aware of the things they've been trying not to acknowledge. And what keeps surfacing is a question, a very simple question. What actually matters to me? Not what everyone else expects. Not what looks right. Not what seems practical. What truly matters. The moment that question appears, everything begins changing. Because the answer isn't coming from logic anymore. It's coming from somewhere deeper. Somewhere they've spent a long time ignoring. And every time they try to move away from that answer, they seem to circle right back toward it. Honestly, Pisces, I don't think you realize how much of a catalyst you've been in this person's life. Not because you forced them to change. Not because you gave them an ultimatum. Not because you demanded anything. You simply existed as yourself. You showed up with a certain honesty, a certain emotional depth, a certain authenticity, and it challenged things they weren't ready to question before. Sometimes growth begins when somebody enters our life and quietly shows us another possibility. That's what this feels like. The star is appearing again, and the energy becomes softer after all of this intensity, almost like a breath after holding tension for too long. This person is beginning to see beyond their fears, beyond their old patterns, beyond the limitations they've been placing on themselves. And while they may not have all the answers yet, they're no longer running from the questions. They're starting to trust what they're feeling. They're starting to trust what their heart has been trying to tell them. The strange thing is that the more they change internally, the more they find themselves revisiting everything connected to you. Not because they're forcing it. Not because they're obsessing. It's happening naturally, like pieces of a puzzle slowly finding where they belong. And as these cards continue unfolding across the table, it feels like something else is beginning to loosen its grip on them, something they've carried for much longer than they should have. The Eight of Cups is the first thing pulling my attention here, and Pisces, it feels like somebody's standing at the edge of a life they've outgrown. Not because everything around them is falling apart, not because they're being forced to leave. It's stranger than that. It's the realization that something no longer feels right. Something that once felt familiar has started feeling heavy. Something that once made sense no longer fits the person they're becoming. And honestly, I think that realization has been difficult for them to accept. Because letting go isn't always about walking away from something bad. Sometimes it's about walking away from something you've carried for so long that you forgot there was another way to live. I keep seeing this person looking around their life differently, looking at certain relationships, looking at certain obligations, looking at routines they've followed without questioning. And for the first time, they're asking themselves whether all of it is truly worth the emotional cost. The devil is crossing the spread, and immediately I feel pressure. Not necessarily from one person, not necessarily from one situation, just pressure, expectations, responsibilities. The feeling of constantly being pulled in directions they didn't choose for themselves. I get the sense that this person has spent a long time trying to keep everybody else comfortable, trying to avoid conflict, trying to meet expectations, trying to be who others needed them to be. But something has shifted, because the more they reconnect with themselves, the harder it becomes to ignore how exhausted they really are. You know, there comes a point where a person gets tired of carrying things that don't belong to them. Tired of fixing problems they didn't create. tired of sacrificing their own happiness to keep everyone else satisfied. And that's exactly where this energy feels. This person is becoming aware of how much of their life has been dictated by outside voices, outside opinions, outside fears, outside expectations. The strange thing is that once they become aware of it, they can't stop noticing it. Every conversation feels different. Every interaction feels different. Every demand placed upon them feels different. Because they're no longer automatically saying yes. They're no longer automatically giving away pieces of themselves. They're starting to question everything. Strength is appearing here, and Pisces, this doesn't feel loud at all. This isn't somebody suddenly becoming rebellious. This isn't somebody creating chaos. This feels quiet, steady, intentional. It's the strength required to choose yourself when you've spent years choosing everyone else. It's the strength required to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. It's the strength required to stop abandoning your own needs. And I think that's exactly what this person is learning. They're beginning to understand that protecting their peace isn't selfish. Listening to their heart isn't selfish. Wanting something different isn't selfish. For so long, they believed they had to keep enduring situations that drained them. But that belief is weakening, and with every day that passes, their inner voice seems to be growing stronger. Honestly, Pisces, I feel like your energy has played a role in this without you even realizing it. Not because you told them what to do, not because you tried to control their choices. You simply represented something different, a different way of living, a different way of connecting, a different way of showing up emotionally. And once they experienced that, it became impossible to forget. Justice is the final card appearing here, and the energy becomes incredibly clear. This person is entering a phase where they're evaluating everything, looking at what gives and what takes, looking at what nourishes and what depletes, looking at what feels honest and what feels forced. And the more honest they become with themselves, the less willing they are to keep participating in situations that leave them empty. There is a chapter quietly closing, not with anger, not with revenge, not with dramatic confrontations, just with awareness, the kind of awareness that changes a person's direction forever. And as these cards continue unfolding across the table, it feels like their focus is slowly beginning to shift away from what they're leaving behind, and towards something they may finally be ready to move closer to. The Knight of Cups is stepping into the energy here, Pisces, and honestly, it feels like somebody who can no longer pretend they don't care. Not because they're being pressured, not because they're running out of time. It feels much more personal than that. Something inside them has become impossible to ignore. A feeling, a desire, a quiet pull that keeps leading them back toward the same place, back toward the same person, back toward you. I keep seeing this individual sitting with their thoughts and realizing that every road they've been exploring somehow circles back to the connection they share with Pisces. And what's interesting is that their focus feels different now. This isn't somebody looking backward trying to relive old memories. This feels like somebody looking ahead, somebody wondering what could actually be possible. What could happen if they stopped resisting? What could happen if they allowed themselves to be honest? Okay. There is a softness entering their energy that wasn't there before. The walls feel lower, the defenses feel weaker. The fear still exists, but it no longer seems to be in control. Because every time they imagine their future, your presence appears somewhere inside it. Not necessarily in dramatic ways, not wedding bells, not fairy tales, just simple moments, peaceful moments, conversations, shared experiences. The feeling of having someone beside them who truly understands them. And honestly, Pisces, I think that's what surprises them the most. Because they spent so much time trying to figure life out on their own, trying to carry everything themselves, trying to prove they didn't need anyone. Yet the more they reflect, the more they realize how much comfort they feel when they think about you. The Two of Cups is sitting beside the Knight of Cups, and the energy immediately becomes more balanced. I don't feel obsession here. I don't feel desperation. I feel recognition. Almost like this person is finally acknowledging something that has been standing in front of them for a very long time. Because when they think about other connections in their life, something feels different. But when they think about Pisces, there is a sense of understanding, a sense of emotional safety, a sense of being seen, and that realization keeps growing. I keep hearing them ask themselves questions they weren't asking before. What would it be like to truly know this person? What haven't I learned about them yet? What have I overlooked? What would happen if I stopped holding back? This person wants to understand you more deeply, not just the version of you they already know, not just the memories, not just the connection they've already experienced. There is genuine curiosity here, a desire to discover the parts of you they haven't seen yet, Temperance appears across the spread and everything slows down. Honestly, I love this energy because it feels mature. It feels intentional. This person isn't rushing anymore. They're not trying to force answers. They're allowing things to settle. They're allowing themselves to process what they've learned about themselves. And in that process, their feelings continue becoming clearer. It's almost like emotional fog lifting, day by day, piece by piece. The confusion that once existed is beginning to fade. The uncertainty that once dominated their thoughts isn't as strong. What remains is something surprisingly simple. They care. They care more than they've been willing to admit. And they're beginning to recognize that. The Four of Wands is showing itself here, and suddenly the future becomes part of the conversation. Not because they've planned every detail. Not because they know exactly how everything will unfold. But because they're finally allowing themselves to imagine stability. Imagine partnership. Imagine building something meaningful instead of constantly questioning whether they should. I keep seeing someone who is becoming less concerned with what could go wrong and more interested in what could actually go right. And that is a major shift. Because for a long time, fear seemed to have the loudest voice in the room. That voice is getting quieter. Another voice is emerging, a calmer voice, a more honest voice, a voice that keeps encouraging them to move toward what feels real instead of what feels familiar. And Pisces, the more this energy unfolds, the more it feels like this person is standing at the edge of a conversation they've been having with themselves for quite some time. A conversation that is slowly guiding them toward a choice they may be closer to making than they realize. The Lovers appears first, Pisces, and the energy immediately feels different. Not heavier, not more dramatic, just clearer. Almost like somebody has finally reached the point where they can no longer argue with their own heart. Because honestly, that's what this feels like. A person who has spent so much time analyzing, questioning, resisting, and second-guessing themselves that they've become exhausted by the struggle. I keep seeing someone who thought these feelings would eventually disappear. Someone who assumed enough time would solve everything. Someone who believed distance would make things easier. But instead of fading, something continued growing quietly beneath the surface. And that's becoming impossible to ignore. The strange thing is that this realization doesn't feel sudden. It feels earned. Like every lesson they've been moving through has slowly led them here. Every memory, every reflection, every uncomfortable truth, every moment of solitude, all of it has been pointing toward the same place, toward the same understanding, toward the same person. And Pisces, the more they stop fighting what they feel, the more peaceful they seem. Not because everything is solved, not because life has suddenly become simple, but because they're finally being honest with themselves. Okay. Judgment is crossing the spread, and I get the sense that this person is hearing something inside themselves that they've ignored for a very long time. A truth, a realization, a calling they can no longer silence. I don't think this is only about love. I think it's also about authenticity. Because for some reason, your connection seems tied to the version of themselves they've been trying to become. When they think about Pisces, they're not just thinking about another person. They're thinking about honesty. They're thinking about emotional freedom. They're thinking about a life that feels more aligned with who they truly are. And that realization changes everything. Because once they recognize that, avoiding the connection becomes much harder. Avoiding their feelings becomes much harder. Pretending becomes much harder. I keep hearing this energy of somebody saying, I know what I feel now, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a confession made to themselves. And honestly, that may be one of the most important moments in this entire journey. The Ace of Pentacles is appearing, and suddenly the energy becomes much more grounded. This person isn't only thinking about emotions anymore. They're thinking about possibilities, real possibilities, practical possibilities, the kind that can actually exist in everyday life. I feel them wondering what it would be like to build something instead of simply imagining it. What it would be like to stop standing on the outside looking in. What it would be like to participate, to show up, to contribute, to invest their energy into something meaningful. And Pisces, there is a sincerity here that feels beautiful, because this no longer feels like fantasy. It feels like somebody who genuinely wants to do things differently than they have before. Someone who wants to approach this connection with more awareness, more maturity, more appreciation. The star is shining over the entire reading again. Honestly, I love seeing it here, because after everything they've been processing, this energy feels incredibly healing. I don't see them looking at Pisces through a lens of idealization. I see gratitude. I see respect. I see someone beginning to understand how much your presence has influenced them. Not through force, not through pressure, simply through your existence, simply through the way you showed up, the way you cared, the way you remained genuine. There's a deep appreciation growing here, one that feels stronger than anything they may have expressed before. Because the truth is, Pisces, I don't think they fully understood your value when they first encountered it. They understand it now. And the more they understand it, the more they realize how rare it truly is. I keep feeling this opening, not an ending, not a final destination, an opening, like a door quietly unlocking, like a heart slowly learning that it no longer wants to stay hidden. Because there are words that have remained unspoken for too long, feelings that have remained buried for too long. And as these cards continue revealing themselves across the table, it feels like that silence is becoming harder and harder for this person to maintain. And Pisces, whatever part of this reading resonated with you, trust yourself. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to chase answers. Some things reveal themselves when the timing is right. What feels strongest throughout this entire reading is that something has been changing beneath the surface for a while now, even if not everything has been visible yet. So keep focusing on your own path. Keep honoring your own heart. Keep allowing yourself to move forward with the same kindness, wisdom, and authenticity that makes your energy so unforgettable. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Your support means more than you know. If this reading connected with your situation, feel free to take what resonates and simply leave the rest. I'll see you again very soon for another reading. Until then, take good care of yourself, Pisces. Okay, bye for now.